Hi everybody, it's Cristina from Adventures in Polished Land, and today I am here with my February reading wrap-up. I did manage to read all 5 books on my TBR by the end of the last day of the month, and I didn't read anything else. So in this video, I will be quickly wrapping up the 5 books I read for the American Lit Reading Challenge. If you want to learn more about them, I will leave links in the description box below to my playlist for this challenge, as well as to the individual book review videos. I've only posted one at the time of filming, but I hope to have the rest up soon. I hope to bulk film some of those so that I can get them up and stay somewhat on task for you. But without further ado, let's jump right into the wrap up. And all of these books I read from the library, so I don't have the physical copy anymore. I will put the picture of the cover up on the screen for you. First up, I read House Made of Dawn by N. Scott Momaday. This was my pick for a book set in New Mexico. This is primarily about a Native American man named Abel. He returns home from war and he's having a very difficult time acclimatizing to his community once again, and he ends up committing a crime that gets him put in jail. And we follow his story through different point of views and perspectives as he goes from New Mexico and he is sent to Los Angeles and then he comes back again. This book was very challenging for me to read just because I wasn't really sure what was going on. It's very heavily written through nature writing, but also there are sections that are largely about Native American rituals and culture, and I just wasn't as familiar with that as I would have liked, so some of it went over my head. That being said, I did learn a lot from this book. I think it would have behooved me if I read it in an educational setting, but on my own, I gave it a 3-star rating. Next up, I read Bastard Out of Carolina by Dorothy Allison. This is my pick for a book set in South Carolina. This is a novel that is based on the author's real life to a certain point. It is about a young girl named Ruth Ann. She goes by the nickname Bone, and the book chronicles her life growing up as a poor white child in rural South Carolina. Now, this book was challenging to read, not because of the writing style, but because of the content. Ruth Ann goes through some horrific times in her childhood, from sexual abuse to physical abuse and everything in between. So although this was a very challenging read in terms of the subject matter, I think it was a very important read, and it showed a side of life that I don't think is often portrayed in the media. That being said, I really enjoyed the book, if you can use the word enjoy for such a hard story, but I gave it a 4-star rating. I am really glad I read this book. I had never heard about it before the challenge, and it was really good. I would recommend it if you can handle these challenging topics. Then I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This book is set primarily in Maryland, although time travel is an element in this novel. Our main character is a young woman named Dana. She lives with her husband in California, and then one day as they are moving into their new home, she suddenly gets teleported back somehow in time and space to Maryland in 1815. And she discovers that she is on a plantation, which is absolutely frightening because Dana is a Black woman and she has to live and experience life in the early 1800s on a plantation. And it turns out that she is going back in time to her ancestors' plantation. So she knows that this boy that she is constantly saving from these life-threatening events is actually one of her great-great-great-grandfathers. I absolutely loved this book. I think it's incredibly written. It has a really tense feeling to it. There is something about a modern day Black woman having to go back in time and experience everything that comes in the antebellum South that was just so frightening and really scary, especially when she experienced things that usually we only read about in historical fiction. It felt like it added a whole new dimension when it was a modern woman experiencing these horrible acts. This book gave me so much to think about, but it was also really well written and I really enjoyed it overall. I gave it a 4.5-star rating, and if you are into time travel books, this is a whole different style because it really combines science fiction with historical fiction, and I think it does it in a really interesting way. Then I read The Unseen World by Liz Moore. This book is set in Massachusetts, and this was my first 5-star read of the year. I absolutely loved this book. It follows a young girl named Ada in the 1980s. She has been raised by a single father who is a computer scientist who works at a lab at BIT. I think it's their take on MIT. And he has cared for her independently since birth. And when he starts developing Alzheimer's symptoms, she begins to learn that her father may not be who he says he is. And so the book uncovers not only the mystery surrounding who her father is and why he has been perhaps living a lie, but it also discusses really interesting topics like artificial intelligence and science as well. So I found this book absolutely incredible. I could not put it down, and I think the ending was extremely fulfilling for me. So if you have read some of Liz Moore's other books, for me it was The God of the Woods, and perhaps didn't love the ending of that one, I would recommend The Unseen World. It was incredibly written, and I would highly recommend it. It's 451 pages, and I read it in 3 days because I could not put it down. And then finally, I read The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Henríquez. This book is set in Delaware. This one is really interesting because it is following several different immigrants to the United States. So our main two families, I would say, are the Rivera family. At the beginning of the book, they are moving from Mexico to Delaware because their teenage daughter Maribel suffered a traumatic brain injury. So they are hoping that the United States will have better care for her and better schooling for her. And in their new apartment complex, they meet the Toro family. So we hear from Mayor Toro. He is a teenage boy around Maribel's age, and he becomes instantly infatuated with her. Mayor's family is from Panama, and they have lived in the United States for almost all of his life. So he helps to form a special bond with Maribel and get her more comfortable in speaking with people, and their families become really close as the Riveras get used to living in the United States. Interspersed throughout their chapters, you get to hear from other immigrants in the apartment complex. I thought those interspersed moments where each character introduces themselves and tells you about their life story, those were really powerful moments in the book because I think it helps to illustrate why so many people still come to the United States even though it might not be safe for them at the end of the day. I gave this book 4 stars. I would highly recommend it. It is a very approachable read because it's written pretty simply and it's easy to read and understand, but it gets its point across in an amazing way without being too preachy. And even though this book is set in the year 2008 and published over a decade ago now, it is more relevant than ever. That wraps up my reading in the month of February. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, once I have my individual book reviews up for all of these, I will update the description box below. I hope you're having a great day and reading some great books. Let me know what your favorite book was in the month of February, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!